Hi everyone, this is Balázs from Racing Brick. You've probably already seen it. This is the box of the brand new 2024 1/8 scale LEGO Technic supercar, the McLaren P1. Yes, it is the P1. For some strange reason, LEGO and McLaren have decided to break with the tradition LEGO maintained for the previous 4 supercars and released a decade-old model instead of a fairly new one. Honestly, I don't know why, but we will come back to that later. This is my first review of all the exciting sets that will be released in August. Make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss them. Here is the box of the set. The design is a little misleading as the front of the box features the rear of the real car and the back, or actually the bottom, features the LEGO set itself. Other than that, it looks pretty good. I like the color scheme and the look. This time we only have 4 tapes to cut, then we can take the top off. And here's another look at the real car, it looks good. We can access the contents in a tricky way. Here are these flaps that reveal a topless view of the LEGO car from above. And then we move on to the finished LEGO set, while on the inside of the flaps are 2 more cool pieces of artwork. There are 3 inner boxes. The middle one is the first, which is kind of logical, but these weird flaps make handling the other 2 a bit odd. The 2 manuals are at the bottom of the box, nicely organized. They also look great when we take them out and lay them next to each other. There's some subtle artwork on the inside too. This is how box number 1 opens, which contains lots of paper bags. At the beginning of the manual there's tons of additional information, at least about certain things. We see both headquarters, the P1 itself, its racing origins, the lap time achieved at the Nürburgring, a nice collection of the McLaren Ultimate series. I'm sure many people will point to a specific car here and ask why didn't they choose that. Another section on the P1, a nice side-by-side photo for you to admire or criticize depending on which side you take. Then pages and pages of information on the design process, how the teams work together. We really do get a lot of stuff. If you don't buy the set, I still recommend you download the manual after release and read this section. We also see a lot of development models and prototype parts and a look into the designer room, which is a pretty rare opportunity. And there's a podcast too. Actually, there will also be a podcast, which I really like, but unfortunately it's not available yet when I'm making this video. And finally, we can start building. The first section is the rear suspension and the exhaust. The parts list can be found at the end of the second manual. Here you can take a look at all the new elements. Now the show can begin. The first assembly is the rear differential with the new parts, nothing special so far. Now it gets interesting, a brand new wishbone part. The size is 7x7 modules and it feels surprisingly flexible. I'm not sure if this will be an advantage in the build, we will see. Here are the fairly new, larger and stiffer shocks in black, and this is what the assembly looks like so far. I hope the wishbones will do their job without bending much. The upper wishbones are installed and so are the wheel hubs. The whole structure has been reinforced on this side with a lot of beams. More reinforcements. This is the rear axle at the end of phase 1. It's interesting to see that clutch between 2 universal joints. I wonder which one will hold better in a real-life lockup situation. Here is a small mechanism with a knob and a worm gear that will control the rear wing. The exhaust system is in place, and I've also added some metallic gold pieces to represent the gold foil used to deflect heat. We fitted the diffuser fins, and you can also see the rear wing activation mechanism in action, which has a linkage and some tricky angled pieces. The construction of the gearbox starts with a lot of stacked beams to build a support base. Here's a brand new clutch gear that is the exact same size as this 12-tooth gear and fits here. If you were expecting the gearbox to be just a slightly modified version of the one from the Daytona SP3, well, this is something else entirely. The layout is all new, and it is even more colorful than before thanks to the new gears that have since been introduced. We are using the relatively new gearbox parts that were only used in the Yamaha bike last year, but according to the manual they were originally developed for this McLaren. Here is the rest of the mechanism with the changeover cylinders. Interestingly, these have been recolored from medium azure to orange, probably to better fit this car, and here their orientation is critical. Also, both of the fork pieces should slide easily on the cross axles when you rotate the drums. Here's a rubber band that will be part of the gear selector mechanism and act as a stepper. We close the gearbox on this side. A lot of cross axles need to find their place. Here comes the new knob gear in grey. It's not just a new color, but also the hole for the cross axle in the middle is rotated 45 degrees compared to the old yellow one. We've already seen these in some Technic Space sets. So, here is the finished gearbox. At this stage, we are only instructed to see if the gears turn, and we can also turn the switching mechanism, but it is difficult to check if the whole thing really works. The build continues with the frame, then comes the V8 with transparent engine blocks again, and the first printed element on top. The engine slides into place, then we add the missing gear. I think now is the best time to check how our gearbox works. We need to add a few more things. I need to fix this green gear here with a half bush, and also add a couple pieces here as a gear indicator and another extension for shifting between gears. The new changeover cylinders need 45-degree increments instead of the previous 90-degree ones. With this setup, we should have 8 different gears, but there's a neutral where the engine doesn't move, so we only have 7. This is how we shift through all the gears one by one. You can see the difference in speed of the engine. With a constant wheel speed, the slowest engine speed corresponds to the highest gear. If I remove the engine, we can see how the components move. This is neutral where none of the clutch gears are engaged, and so we shift through the full range of gears. And now it's time to put together the two assemblies we built so far. Pay attention to the alignment, there are a lot of pin and cross-axle connections. We built not one but 2 selectors here. One has the usual 3 states and works with a firm click, but the other seems to only have one connection on this side and can be moved freely. I assume they will be linked together later. This will be the pedal shifter mechanism, but there are other parts missing to make it work. There are a lot of short black beams like this in the package, but only 2 with the P1 logo printed on them, which you will need later. This assembly goes here and then the whole thing goes here. These rubber bands make sure that the shift mechanism works properly. The knob gear below rotates 45 degrees with each shift. Our first assemblies with larger bright light orange parts are the seats, and this is a clever way to keep the side panels at an angle. As an important final step in this package, our selectors are connected so that their movement is synchronized. By adding this knob gear here, the pedal shifter and gearbox are now connected, although shifting is not as smooth yet as the structure still needs to be reinforced. So that's the end of box 1. We've added some elements of the dashboard, including the white tile with the car's unique ID. Let's test the system. Now comes the interesting thing with the gear stick. According to the manual, the gear stick lets you switch between hybrid, neutral and E mode. But wait a minute, we already had a neutral in the gearbox, didn't we? Let's see. Yes, when the stick is in the center position, the engine doesn't move and the drums that represent the electric motor don't move either. In the forward position they both move, so that's hybrid mode. When I push it backwards, only the electric motor moves, that's E mode. But this also means that I can shift into neutral with the pedal shifters, even if the gear stick is in hybrid mode, which I find a bit confusing. Anyway, let's move on to box 2. Accessing the contents of this box isn't easy with that big flap on the top, but there should be a way in. Okay, here's how to open it. This assembly with the shock absorber is part of the door opening mechanism. We will see how it works. It goes here. The linkage gets more complicated, but we still need more parts. We had the first bigger body panels. This one sits at an angle, and here's a notoriously difficult step. I'm supposed to insert this pin with pinhole. You know, it's almost impossible to push it in, and there's not much room left here. I think it's best if I remove the pieces I added in the previous step, then I have more room for it, and then I can still put them back and fix the panels. Here comes the front axle, which is similar to the rear one, but this time with steering. We have a nice printed logo for the steering wheel, and apparently the gearing allows us this time to center the steering wheel and front wheels properly. The front axle will be closed with a wall in the next phase, and with a whole series of additional elements, and we also have this rod here to support the hood. We continue the construction with the roof section. There are some system parts as well. The new narrow curved panels that first appeared in the Formula 1 sets this year are also used. Another surprise, we have brand new elements for the A-pillars. These look very special. Look at this shaping. I wonder what other uses they will have in the future. If you have an idea, let me know in the comments. At the end of this phase, we go back to the rear with another pair of printed panel fairings. Some angled connections at the front and more system parts for the details. Tricky angles seem to be used more and more in this area. These look cool in place. The brick-built headlight assembly has a lot of detail, and with even more angled elements, I have to say I'm pretty impressed with the end result. Everything is neat, things are firmly in place, and yet it looks very complex and the lines flow nicely. We start working on the hood. Here's another printed McLaren logo. The structure will be quite complex with several different panel fairings, and now it's time to install them. The large curved fender piece for the Ferrari is now available in bright light orange, and here are two brand new panel fairings to fill the gap. These have an unusual new design, and I have a feeling they are very much purpose-made here to fit this design perfectly. I really wonder how and where they will be used in the future. A small but interesting detail: at first I thought the beam and the angled panel fairing won't fit together, but there's actually a tiny gap between the two. They are just right. Someone really checked the tolerances. That's part of the door, by the way, and I can see it's not going to be a simple construction. And it gets even more complicated because there are some nice angles implemented. Just look at those lines. This might be my favorite assembly so far because there are so many nice solutions squeezed in. It's quite a challenge to fix the link here. There are a few other connections needed, but now the door is in place. Let's take a look at the opening mechanism. That looks very promising. And let's not forget the rear view mirror. Here it is. Yet another printed McLaren logo, and I think those control arms are actually new in light bluish grey. There are a lot of new parts in bright light orange, but this might be the biggest. This is going to be a quite big assembly, and we are nowhere near finished here. This is the rear section before the final bag. The rear lights are recreated with flex axles. Normally I'm not a big fan of them, but here they seem to fit properly and follow the required curves well. The rear wing is assembled now and snaps into place easily. Printed brake calipers, and then come the new and frankly very cool looking rims and tires. And the bag is back. However, it's not branded this time, which is a shame. And last but not least comes the plaque, printed of course, and our build is finished. So, here is our completed model in all its glory. To be honest, I wasn't a big fan of the color before the build, because I really wanted a big purple Technic set, but this one looks pretty good. I will let you look at the build from all angles, while I have to tell you that unfortunately we've already come to the end of the first part of this review. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. I will give you some time to consume it and share your opinion in the comment section. This video was already long enough. But don't worry, the next part is coming very soon. I will of course go through the features, check if they work properly and how visible their effects are, check the shaping for authenticity, put the set next to the previous models for comparison, and share my final verdict on the model. If there's anything else you would like to see in the video, let me know in the comments and I will see if I can include it. Please don't ask me to compare it to the well-known custom build from 5 years ago, because I don't have that build, I can't compare them. But if you have other ideas or requests that don't require me to get parts for a complete supercar build in 2 days, let me know. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe with notifications, because the next part of this review is coming soon, and don't forget all the other August Technic sets either. See you next time, bye bye.